Gotham Knights Episode 2. It wasn't great, and after the terrible TV I've been watching lately, I may have to fall back on comfort eating.
I'll have 2 number 9s, a number 9 large, a number 6 with extra dip, a number 7, 2 number 45.
And on the current form, I wouldn't recommend watching Gotham Knights at all. If you are curious, just watch reviews of it instead. Do not reward them for making this. Conclusion: watch something else. The show cuts to the runaways laying low, seeing as how the whole police force is out looking for them. Only joking. The show cuts to an obnoxious edgy soundtrack, and that's very Batwoman, as the group of young people are instead stealing clothes from a store. Bruce Wayne's adopted son Turner is not happy about this and insists that they will have to pay the store back after they have cleared their names, at which point one of the girls says,
Right. Just as soon as the store pays back all the child labor they exploited to make this stuff.
And no, even if the store did do those things, that would still not make your theft ethical. There are maybe a few times when it could arguably be ethical to steal. Maybe if a person was starving. Maybe. But not because you want a $1,400 jacket for free. And not very funny story, Time Warner, one of the parent companies of the CW that made this show, has itself been accused of exploiting child labour in Hidalgo, Mexico. And even if the place these people were robbing did use child labour, would that make stealing from them ethical? The people stealing are still benefiting from the child labour. The children were still exploited to make the expensive jacket that you're stealing. All the thieves have done is act as unethically as the people they consider detestable. In response to this, Bruce Wayne's son says, I doubt the law would see it that way. And the almost dead name person from last episode says,
Well, you know, if you victimize the victimizer, then it's a victimless crime.
Oh, marvellous! We have another show like She-Hulk, like Velma, like The Rings of Power being written by people with a frankly repulsive concept of ethics. No, that's not how that works. If that was how that worked, if a man caught a woman shoplifting in his store, he would have the right to force himself on her. After all, if he victimises a victimiser, it's a victimless crime. Again, a Hollywood studio tries to write a hero and can't even manage to write an anti-hero. They end up as a villain. Their heroes consistently display the traits of a villain. And I'm sorry, I can barely even conceal my contempt for the psycho who wrote this. This is like Galadriel in The Rings of Power going all goose-steppy again. If this is what Hollywood writers consider to be heroism, I am genuinely curious who their heroes are. Who do you reckon? Just a guess, Stalin? Chairman Mao? Possibly the Austrian painter? He considered himself a victim too, but what he did must have been fine, I guess. After all, if he victimised the victimiser, it must have been a victimless crime. They thought that sounded smart when they wrote it, like it was a good message for the young people to hear. Why, just why would you reward the same writers that did Batwoman with another series? This is a strand of American politics that I frankly have no time for. Please stop defending criminals. The new Robin arrives because they set the alarm off, and she seems oddly fine with them robbing the shop. Maybe she should have strung them up by their feet. After all, victimising a victimiser is a victimless crime. And never you mind the people probably on minimum wage who rely on this shop for work. The episode isn't entirely bad though. It introduces a new villain, and I quite like the Talon guy, the enforcer for the Court of Owls. But it's a shame that they didn't build him up properly, and have pretty much wasted him by the end of the episode. They needed some scenes to build his villainy, and build him as a credible threat to the protagonists. If he's going to be a Vader-like scary guy, you have to build his legend. Instead, he gets wailed on by the kids, and by the end of the episode is about as threatening as a piñata. It's like you couldn't have had Luke beat Vader up with a stick, 5 minutes into A New Hope. You have to have the antagonist winning. Prior to that, the episode starts off with the police running into the Batcave. And we are not off to a strong start here. This is an important thing that was always treated with a lot of seriousness in Batman because his sanctuary had been breached. And here, they just do it off camera. It's not a shock the Batcave got found because the hiding place was insultingly easy. All it took probably was for one policeman to lean on an alcove. And this is not a thing that you should do off camera. And are we sure there are quite enough cops there? They come in, pointing their semi-automatic guns all around, looking up, and when the camera pans out to show where they were standing, it embarrassingly turns out that quite a few of them were just pointing their guns mostly at the ceiling. Harvey Dent is torn. He needs to catch Batman's adopted son, but feels bad about it. And yes, that would be a massive conflict of interest, which should be telling him to recuse himself. The runaways then come up with a plan to get more information. They want to break back into Wayne Tower, where Robin tells them Bruce Wayne kept journals of his investigations. And of course, this hidden place stayed hidden for all those years. The cops didn't find it, hidden as it was with such an intricate mechanism that required moving one book. This was a crime scene, and the cops didn't find a hidden alcove activated by moving one book. And this is laughable. They get the journals, then the Talon shows up. A big, scary, ruthless enforcer guy. It looked like it could have been interesting at first, and it could have been, but it wasn't. They kind of punk the Talon guy out. The kids run away from him a lot and then wail on him. And the show wastes a promising bad guy who now has no menace whatsoever going forward, and the parts of the episode that weren't infuriating were a waste of time. Most of the episode was just the kids running away from the Talon. The kids, one of whom in real life is 29 years old, so I was thinking more about episode 1, and in my review of that I noticed that the men in the episode did nothing but act as whipping boys for the women. I also noted that the episode was very anti-cop. Pretty much every cop in it was both corrupt and incompetent, but on further reflection I noticed something else. All of the dirty cops in episode 1, as far as I could see, were white men. Gotham is supposed to be like New York. In the NYPD, from the figures I looked up, a quarter of their officers are Hispanic, and 16% are black. Only 50% are white at all. So it appears that this show, like Batwoman, is also going to come with a hefty serving of racial prejudice from the makers, so that'll be nice. This is looking a lot like it's falling into the trap of the message, a concept I discussed at length in the linked video. They do have non-white male officers in this episode though. They are playing the competent non-corrupt cops that take over after the not-so-secret secret society, the Court of Owls, ends the dirty cops from last episode and sends their heads to police headquarters in packages. The problem we're seeing with a lot of Hollywood writing is caused by it being an attempt to make art by committee, and you can't make art by committee. The writers, I fear, are the sort of people that would, in the name of equity, put a tampon dispenser in an F-35 fighter plane. Conclusion: watch something else. I'm trying to think of something of a comparable genre that isn't awful. Maybe early Arrow. Buffy? Smallville maybe? I'd even recommend the series Alphas before I'd recommend this. I'd even recommend Mutant X before recommending this show. Or you could, alternatively, watch my video on the weird story of how Gotham City got its name. Anyway, back to my comfort eating.
Those look good. A big salty clam would sure go great with this heat.
It's only a wafer thin.